We're live. Welcome to Legends Podcast. I'm Jeremy. We got Dylan on his lovely piss throne.
Remember when
We
these
got
were numbered?
Brian in the blue room. And Marcel is joining us with a wonderful set of bookshelves. So typically what I do when we start a Legends podcast, we have someone new on. I ask them, how'd they get into the EU? So Marcel, since I genuinely don't know how you got into the EU, let's hear your EU origin story.
Oh, okay, yeah. I played Shadows of the Empire as a kid, and I finished the game. I think there's a secret ending that's like Dash Rendar survives, and I remember going on the internet, and back then it was like 56K, like dialing up to find out. I'm like, Dash Rendar survives. Is there anything more about this?
Right.
And then that's when I found the Force.net message boards and found that there was a Shadows of the Empire novelization, and just kind of took off from there. And so I ended up reading most of the Bantam books before New Jedi Order came out, and then reading New Jedi Order, and then reading the Dark Nest trilogy. And after that, I stopped reading Star Wars for a number of years. And then I came back around the time of decanonization and read some books that I had missed, like Plagueis and all that kind of thing. And then was kind of, I don't know, disenchanted with the new stuff, and then came back again in 2020 and started rereading, like just from like Heir to the Empire. And ever since, I've been doing like rereads here and there, and filling in a lot of the stuff that I missed the first time, like prequel era stuff. And here I am.
All right.
It's always interesting hearing these stories because everybody seems to be just a little different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I feel like I relate to you because my parents were into Star Wars at that time and they read the books to me. So I get a lot of the Bantam stuff. Oh, not all of it. They never owned Crystal Star, for instance.
Yeah.
And out of all the Callista books, they own Planet of Twilight.
What a one to own of all of them.
My mom likes Barbara Hambley's fantasy stuff, and she just bought it on a whim, not knowing that there was a Children of the Jedi or Darksaber. But growing up, we had Jedi Academy trilogy, Thrawn trilogy, Hand of Thrawn duology.
Yeah.
Han Solo, AC Crispin Han Solo, Brian Daly Han Solo, the original trilogy novels, well, all the movie novels except for the TCW movie. But they really gave up on Del Rey. I think we own Vector Prime.
Okay.
My mom never finished that book. We had Shadowhunter, Cloak of Deception, Labyrinth of Evil, and Shadows of Mindor. My mom bought that on a whim and never read it.
It has an eye-catching cover.
And it's a Luke book. And she's like, oh, they still do original trilogy books? Not paying attention to the fact that the whole post-Jedi thing is like all Luke stuff. So.
Yeah. You mentioned... I was going to say the Crystal Star is interesting just because I read all those Bantam books except for the Crystal Star, because on the Force.net back in the day, everybody said that was the very worst Star Wars book of all time.
It's not.
I read it, I think, for the first time in 2022, if you can believe it, and I absolutely loved it. I thought it was, it's not like I'm not going to say it's a good book, but I just enjoyed reading it.
Yeah.
See, I almost think that's why that's what the resurgence is all about. It's just like decades of information about this book, like it just putting people's expectations so low that when it's not absolute trash, they go like, wow, I actually enjoyed that. That was kind of fun.
That wasn't so bad. What was everybody talking about?
It has more of a point than the Bounty Hunter Wars.
Yeah, well, Alex would agree with you there. I would too.
It's all good. Alex was going to be on here, but he had a bunch of things come up, so...
We mentioned
thank you for joining us, Alex.
We mentioned, just kind of getting into our topic. You mentioned Shadows of Mindor. Stover actually had an interesting story about that cover. Of apparently, he was in the process of writing Shadows of Mindor, and then someone at Del Rey came up to him with the cover idea because it was like art. The artist had it was like an art piece that they had made for like a convention, and someone from Del Rey approached him and said, "Hey, can you use this cover for his book?" And he was like, Yes, and then he immediately went back and rewrote Shadows of Endor to justify using that cover.
Yeah, I
That's not
remember
the
that
first
story.
time that's happened. That happened with Izzard's Revenge, if I'm not mistaken, because they found out that there was a snow battle on the cover. I can't remember. Is that Stackpole that wrote that one, or is it
Yeah.
Alston?
Yeah. Stackpole.
The Stackpole one right in between the Alston books.
Stackpole was that. So our main topic today is we're talking about Legends Con. I wasn't there. I had a lovely engagement party with my family.
That's a legitimate excuse.
Yeah.
I think I can allow that one. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Brian implies that there's non-legitimate excuses.
Well, yeah, what's work,
Let's work.
What's
What I was getting at.
Nah, those don't count.
I was
working
a
while I
little
was at
bummed,
Legends
though, when
Con.
they
Come on.
started announcing authors, and I'm like, well, shit.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I would have had to drive. I had so many things I wanted signed, I couldn't fly with them. Would have had to drive down and take a wheelbarrow in.
So I had to drag an entire suitcase just full of books and graphic novels and comics across a continent, across like 5 airports, because
Mhm.
I traveled for 2 weeks before. That was the reason why I ended up going to Legends Con, because we had a wedding on the West Coast, so and it kind of matched up really nicely with the con. So I figured I could make both work. But the catch to that was that I would have to travel with all these books for 2 weeks before actually reaching the con itself. And I'm
Right.
happy to say that like 99% of them reach the con in really good condition still. Like
I was gonna
nothing
say
was
keeping them
damaged.
safe that long is
Yeah.
is the real challenge there too.
Yeah. So
That's impressive. And
Very
out of those 99%, how many would you say actually got the signatures you were seeking?
everything except for Henry Gilroy, because
Really?
he hurt his arm and he wasn't able to sign, as we learned at the con itself.
Oh, that's right. I saw him. He had his arm in the sling, didn't he? That's right.
Apparently he was like working, he was like giving like people like backroom deals, being like, yeah, I'll sign that for you, just like don't tell anybody else. I never heard that. So, that's what I heard.
Yeah.
So who-
Well,
We gotta explain who all author-wise showed up.
The big names of like the names that I think most people will recognize were Stackpole, Michael Stackpole, Matthew Stover, Jason Fry, Barbara Hambly, Randy Stradley, Sean Stewart's, Corinna Becco, Abel G. Pena was there.
Yep.
Uh,
Joe Bongiorno.
Jonah Bongiorno was there. Henry Gilroy, as you mentioned. Daniel Keys Moran, he was there on Saturday. I think he left on Sunday.
Yeah, he was never actually formally announced. He was just in their program. Like he never had his own, as far as I saw, he never had his own like, this person's coming to Legends Con.
I'm missing
I
I'm
think you're
missing a
right.
bunch of them.
There's Craig
well.
There
Miller
were.
as well.
Craig Miller.
Yeah,
Okay.
he wrote Star Wars Memories. Michael Kogi,
Yep.
who did a lot of the West End Games work and currently writes for Star Wars as well, I think.
What is he write currently?
I think he writes short stories in the
Huh.
new canon. I haven't read them, but I'm
Do
pretty
they
sure.
even allowed? Well, yeah, I guess there's another certain point of view came out,
Yeah, exactly.
which
Yeah.
made me want to have an anal evacuation just thinking about that. I don't give a shit if they're for charity. They don't try. You gotta at least try to make a good product. Just the laziest dog shit. I'm sorry. I'm getting off my soapbox about the.
how does he
that's
actually
fine.
feel?
I only suffered through the entirety of one of them. But maybe as from a certain point of view, Return of the Jedi is good. Maybe Empire Strikes Back was horrible. I didn't finish it. I only
Yeah,
read a handful of stories that the Geeks Addict reviewed. He didn't even finish it. And that's
That's
saying
bad.
something.
Yeah. He's pretty
But
good at
that
finishing
first
those
one-
books, typically.
When Chuck Wendig's one of the better authors, you know something's gone wrong.
Chuck wasn't there, unfortunately.
No,
No.
That would have been a coup if he was.
Matt Martin was supposed to be there, and apparently he was there taking photos, but people were looking for him. No one who was there reports having seen him. So I highly doubt he was actually there, but supposedly he was there taking photos.
Yes, rumor has it he was there, but there was no confirmation from anybody.
And who was that guy in the trench coat with the fedora and the glasses? There's nobody like that.
That was Matt Wilkins in his Chuck
Yeah.
Winding disguise.
Fake beard.
Giant glasses. Yep, that definitely would have been Matt. No, I think they had quite the guest list. It was pretty exciting to see so many of those people in person. Interestingly, and I'm sure we'll get into it in detail later, but there were some good opportunities to have some good conversations with these authors too.
Yeah. I think the fact that it was a smaller convention this time around, it was only, I think, like 300 to 400 people in that next.
Yeah.
Was really to its credit. Like, it made it so much easier to like get your stuff signed, because there was only like I think most of the authors were there both days, so that you could, if you missed out the first day, you could get stuff signed the second day. But there was only like an hour to get stuff signed. Like, they had hour blocks, right? And some of those lines, like Stover and Stackpole, were pretty long, and people, like, the authors would take time to talk to people too.
Yep. Dylan and I, we were running the Twin Sons Foundation booth, and I was at the booth for almost the entire time. And we saw authors roaming around pretty regularly. It's just milling about like the other guests were, and the other attendees were just ticketed attendees.
Hambly stopped by, Stover stopped by. So Stackpole stopped by, and Sean Stewart stopped by at some point.
Yeah, I saw you guys talking to Stackpole for like a good 20-30 minutes.
Yeah, I think it was at least a 20-minute conversation. We actually cut it short when we realized, oh, hey, he's got a thing coming up. He's got to get to.
Was it like a Dave Wolverton situation when you weren't with me, Dylan? That was Matt.
Yeah.
The second time I ran into Dave Wolverton at Gen Con, and he was teaching 8-hour writing classes, all of Gen Con. So Dylan and I caught him when he was done for the night, the first night. And I said, "Excuse me, are you Mr. Wolverton?" I didn't know how to approach him, and we're like looking. I have my copy of. I think it's in here somewhere. I still have it, and I'm looking at the dust jacket, which is a significantly younger Dave Wolverton. We're trying to match him up.
Did he correct you? Did he say like "call me Dave" or anything like that?
No, he was one of the
Mr.
nicest human
Wolverton?
beings I've ever met. But the second time, Matt brought all of his missions books for him to
20 of
sign.
them. Like 20
All
missions.
his missions and all the episode 1 adventures that Dave Wolverton wrote.
Well, I mean, he's not around anymore, right? So good for him.
No, I know. I'm glad I had 2 things signed by him. I could only save 1 from the fire.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that I got that one signed.
What was the one that you saved?
Courtship of Princess Leia. It's a first print hardcover.
Of course. Yeah.
Good choice.
The other stuff was under my bed in a container, and there wasn't time. And that was on the shelf. I'm like, that one.
Yeah, of course.
It's still a good one to grab.
Did John Ostrander show up to this convention?
No, he wasn't. We were actually talking, I think, on Brennan's server about like the guests that like we'd like to see at the next one, and that was one that came up a lot. Actually, the authors lineup was very good. We were talking about this as well. The artist lineup, there was only one, if I remember correctly, right?
I'm gonna butcher her last name. Shay
I think that's-
Standeffer. Shay Standeffer. Yeah.
I think that's right. Yeah.
And she moderated the New Jedi Order panel, as I recall.
Was that who? Okay.
Yeah, that was
Interesting.
the one. She seemed to be very good friends with Randy Stradley. Like, they sat beside each other. Obviously knew each other from before.
That's not surprising. Randy Stradley was like the head of
Yeah,
the
Dark
whole
Horse.
Dark Horse thing.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
a miracle anyone likes him. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Did I just drop some shade about that?
Shade.
So, Jeremy,
I'm pretty
we
sure
actually
that was
got
a full-on eclipse.
we actually got some conflicting. We got some conflicting takes on Wood Wars.
Oh.
We did. We were hoping
He wasn't there, was he?
No, Brian
No.
Wood was not there.
But
the kiss
was
of
it you
death
or
for
Brennan?
any movie property.
So who asked Stradley the Wood Wars question?
Oh, okay. So it was me and Brent. So Brennan and I, like months ago, got into an argument over whether or not it was canon to the expanded universe, and I was of the opinion that it wasn't, and he was the opinion that it was, at least intended to be. And then we went to Stradley. We walked up to Stradley, and Stradley said, "Yeah, it was supposed to be canon to the expanded universe." But like Mr. Stradley, like you wrote, and like I think Brian Wood even said, like it was written as though only episode 4 had happened, and he's like, "Well, that doesn't mean that anything." Like, all the other stuff didn't happen after. And then we're like, but you also said that it was like written, intended to be like its own standalone thing. He's like, yeah, well, we wanted to sell more comics. So and then we went to another guy we mentioned who we didn't mention was Mike Hansen was there, and he is in charge of putting together the Epic collections now. Like super nice guy.
Yes.
And we asked him about Wood Wars, and he gave more of a conflicting answer. He said, he says it was his understanding that they were not supposed to be part of, but they fit, and therefore they can be. So he's like, so you're both right, guys.
They don't fit. That's the problem. They don't fit at all.
Yeah.
It's just he remade a bunch of stories he liked.
Yeah,
He
and I was
Great Squadron. He remade Courtship of Princess Leia, and he made them all shittier.
I was thinking in my mind at the time, I was like, should I bring that up with Randy Stradley? I was like, does Randy Stradley really want to hear this like random guy argue about continuity? Like 15, like 10 years after after that series came out.
Don't be like don't be like Alex, who tried to argue with Matthew Stover about why White Denning versus made sense.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I'm gonna throw some things that I'm very thankful didn't happen. Number one, I'm very thankful Noah was not there, because I can only imagine the chaos that would have ensued.
Well, I don't think aside from Stradley, there's anyone that was there that Noah doesn't like.
Barbara Hambly.
I think she would have won him over.
I think that Barbara Hambly is a very nice human being from all that I've read and stuff, and she's pretty cool with the fans, so I have no issues. Would rather read Crystal Star over Planet of Twilight, but
yeah,
I'd rather read Planet of Twilight over anything K.W. Jeter's ever written.
Yeah. He wrote like Blade Runner sequels too.
Yeah, they're bad.
Yeah,
they're really, really bad. They made Blade Runner 2049 look like the greatest film ever.
Yeah,
since Con Bavaria, who would go? All the authors are in the U.S. You might get Karen Traviss actually. So,
yeah, that's another one I'm very thankful for. Is we didn't have a Karen Traviss situation.
Well,
because she'll never show up to anything Star Wars ever again.
Stover apparently, I mean, I don't want to speak out of turn, but it sounds like he didn't have like the best parting of ways with Lucasfilm and with the publisher, with Del Rey. There were health issues and he couldn't finish Imperial Commando 2, but he had gotten a ways into it. I think he said he wrote like something like 12,000 words before, but the project ended. This was in private conversation with me and Alex and a couple others after the con. Actually, he was very generous with his time. He just hung around.
Yeah.
What was that? That was after the closing ceremonies. We were all in there for about an hour, just milling with everybody.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess he said that he said like there's no love lost, but I mean he's there at Legends Con, and he was very, very happy to be there. So. I not necessarily that I want to see Karen Traviss, but maybe that's not like, that won't prevent her from coming to a future Legends Con.
Well, just I say what I say because she has made it abundantly clear that she wants nothing to do with Star Wars ever again.
That's fair.
She wrote her blog post of what she wanted out of the Commando books.
Yeah.
And then washed her hands of it. And you know what? As much as I don't like Karen Traviss, and I think that she's very egotistical and rude to fans, she was done dirty. It was clear that Davey Boy was going to get priority over literally everyone, which he still does.
Yeah. That was a sign of things to come.
Although finally people are starting to be like, maybe Dave Filoni isn't the second coming of Christ.
Well,
With the Ahsoka.
we'll see how that lasts.
Yeah.
Right.
He has a good way of bouncing back. Remember when the movie came out and then he bounced back to the TV show?
Oh, right. Yeah.
Well, no one liked the show until Disney bought out everything. And then
Yeah,
all the Gen Zs decided that it was the greatest thing ever.
That's right.
And then we
Man.
ended up fighting with everyone. That
Probably
and
my-
we still fight with everyone. I swear, Legends podcast. I'm going out on a tangent because I want to talk about this because this drives me up a wall. We get two types of people that can't stand the Legends podcast. I mean, we get other types too, but these are the primary two. The number one is all the Filoni fans throw a fit every time we complain about how bad all of Dave Filoni's stuff is. And the other part are the Karen Travis fans. Our first comment we ever got on the podcast on iTunes is, "This podcast is great, except for they make fun of Karen Travis, and so I can't like it."
Wow.
I don't, and it's so funny because I feel like I have one of the most nuanced opinions of Travis. Like I like some of her writing, but not all of it. But
I like 2 books.
Dylan, it was your
Maybe
your
3.
channel that made me realize her books are wildly popular.
yeah, well, I think we've known that for just being in the for a while. But yeah, because there are she has a very loyal and dedicated fan base.
Yeah.
And it's very polarizing. But when it counts of putting reviews on Goodreads, that's where all her fans go apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
well,
haven't-
the thing, she writes military combat
right.
better than anyone. The only person Star Wars wise that I have written that comes close is Alexander Freed.
Yeah.
Kind of gets it, but she was a war and police correspondent for the media in the UK, and it's especially reading Hard Contact, parts of 000, and No Prisoners. You get that. I mean, the tactics are especially No Prisoners, where they're on space Afghanistan. And these separatists, like, people are the Taliban.
She just writ what she knew. That's what you're supposed to do as an author, is write what you know.
It's her best book. No Prisoners is a solid book.
The other surprising thing about Karen Travis is that she wrote so much in so little time compared to some of the other authors. And another thing I learned from Dylan's channel.
Yeah, she wrote all her Star Wars books. I believe it's less than 5 years.
Crazy.
Well, yeah, she was. She wrote the most Clone Wars stuff for the first Clone Wars multimedia project out of any author that wasn't comics.
Speaking of, by the way, short time spans in Clone Wars authors, so we found out at Legends Con that apparently Sean Stewart had 4 months to write Yoda Dark Rendezvous.
Yeah.
You hear all sorts of crazy stuff from them. I'm trying to remember
And-
all the things that we talked to these authors about, because we had so many good conversations.
And knowing what we know about Escape from Dagu, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It sounds like they really wanted to just get something out the door. And the other thing that Sean Stewart said in his panel about Yoda Dark Rendezvous is that he had very little contact with Lucasfilm during the writing of and after that book had been released, and they never asked him to write another book. He said that he had conversations with Leland Chee about continuity. That's probably how that like Dooku clone ends up getting mentioned in Yoda Dark Rendezvous. It's like a blink and you miss it reference to, I think, like a Game Boy Advance game. And he said like he would email Leland back and forth, and they would talk about continuity, but otherwise, like, it was very hands off, which was surprising because you think Yoda's such like a, like a hallmark character. Like you'd think that they
and a character that George had said no, you can't write about for so long that they would be all on board micromanaging like everything he did with it.
Yeah, but no, apparently not.
They had too much, because that's before Revenge of the Sith was coming out.
Yeah,
2002 or 3, I believe.
Yeah,
What,
I
yeah,
think they were preparing that he was working. Lucas was working with Jindy Turtowski more than anyone else, and James Lucino, which that still had continuity errors between the two, but
I
it
know
could have
that's
been worse.
crazy to me.
It
But
could have been the new canon, which they just rewrite things every couple years.
or TCW where it seems like it's intentional as opposed to unintentional.
Oh yeah. You know, just the consistent middle finger in every episode.
Yeah.
Well, if it was TCW, the episodes would have come out outside of chronological order. We would have had we would have started with the Grievous Hypori one, and then the
Right.
next one would be Kit Fisto on Moncal, and then the one after that would be the Battle of Unilis, but then it would be split up with Mace Windu on Dantooine.
And then we just have some of Anakin's duel with Asajj Ventress, but not in order.
Mm-hmm.
Matt Stover said that he based his characterization of Dooku in the Revenge of the Sith novelization off of the way that Sean Stewart wrote him. And he said that he deliberately put in references to expanded universe, like multimedia project Clone Wars materials by design. Like he wanted them to be in there to like make them further reinforce their canonicity.
Stover was very well read when we talked to him on Star Wars. I remember asking him because a lot of people consider Revenge of the Sith the best of the novelization. I asked him are you aware of that? And he said, yeah, I am. And I hear it a lot, and I think it's great praise. And he mentioned because I think Jason Fry and Terry Brooks and Bob Salvatore and even James Caan, he even made a tangent about how he thinks James Caan's Return of the Jedi is, in his opinion, the best of the novelizations, which is
Right.
he's
I
read
think all
the
of us
OT
were there for that one.
novelizations.
Yeah.
Well,
It
it's
was a good
definitely better
tangent he went
than
off.
Empire.
The interesting thing about Matt Stover is that he seemed like he was one of the few authors there that actually had at least an appreciation about. I know we're kind of going all over the place, but he had an appreciation about what happened after New Jedi Order, in the timeline. He said, I think he was either at lunch with Shelley Shapiro or Sue Rostoni. I can't remember which one, but one of the two had told him that they were Vergier is a Sith or something like that. And he said that was, am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
Yeah, I've already dropped it in.
That was a fucking terrible idea.
Yes,
It is. It is one of the worst decisions that wasn't
Stover.
made by Dave Filoni.
Yeah, you'll notice this if you've seen any of the clips or the panels that have gone up. Stover does not mince words. He was he was dropping F-bombs.
That was very quickly apparent. I didn't have many chances to talk to him either. So, that first few minutes that I was up there talking with him and you guys, and it was like, oh, okay, so this is how he talks.
Yeah.
All right. No, that was good. That was all after that closing ceremony, though. It was a few of the authors just hung around, and whoever wanted to was free to hang around and talk with the authors. Not many people stuck around, surprisingly.
I know, that was surprising to me too. I think they were all waiting to go to dinner together, and we were just kind of milling about and ended up eating in the same restaurant that they did. But
right. Just
luckily,
by chance, but
not anywhere near them, so it wasn't awkward. We were staring over the next table at them.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we wanted to have our conversation about what we thought immediately afterwards, and we're we can't do that right next to the convention organizers and the guests.
Right.
That's funny.
So speaking of funny stories with Hambly, we were at so I went to Joe's panel about supernatural encounters, and right after there was a panel. Right after there was a panel with a bunch of the authors. I can't remember what it was, but we were just kind of talking in our own circle, and in walks Barbara Hambly and Sean Stewart and a couple of the other authors that were there, and someone, I forget who it was, just shouts out, and I didn't even realize how short Barbara Hambly was, really loud, with Barbara Hambly 10 feet, 5 or 10 feet behind him. And then we all just started laughing.
Yeah.
Can we talk about how Barbara Hambly came fully decked out in, her robes and her staff?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
She was completely dressed up as a Jedi Master. It was awesome.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Actually a pretty high quality costume from what I saw. I mean, she I saw her first time when she actually stopped by our booth to talk with us briefly, Dylan. That was
Can we talk
I didn't
about
recognize her at first because she was in costume, and I was like, oh, that's awesome.
Right.
But she was a little shorter, and had her nice staff, detailed staff with her, and full on robes. And Dylan, what was she saying about that costume? It was hilarious.
She was saying, because I asked her, because online everyone knows it as like the Callista cosplay. So I asked her, "Is that a Callista?" And she's like, "No, it's just a Jedi robes I wear." So I'm like, "Oh, okay." And then she said, "Yeah, I like it because unlike she has like a Doctor Who one she does as well. Because I think she either she either writes or she like is a big Doctor Who fan. I didn't ask her. I don't know." But she's like, "Yeah, it's just really easy to get in and out of when I have to go to the bathroom."
This is a Star Trek book that she wrote that has like a Doctor Who reference in it. And I asked her about it. I didn't bring it to the con because it's like falling apart.
Oh, that was Max that said Barbara Hamley was so short. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it was Max. Max was there asking the real questions. He asked Stackpole about whether humans or Solonians could have kids.
I wondered if somebody was going to ask.
Yeah.
There's a clip on YouTube. Only Good Games has it of the of the question.
Max also asked Jason Fry about Paul Urquhart's theory between Mara and Anakin, which I will not talk about, but he asked him like point blank. And if you want to hear Jason Fry's answer, I will tell you afterwards individually.
Okay, I don't know what this is, so
Okay.
yeah, I want to hear this. This sounds like fucking nonsense.
And I was standing beside Max, and I was like, "Oh my god, can you ask that question? Are we gonna get kicked out?"
See, Max is because there was questions like I really wanted to like kind of ask like Stackpole like, "Hey, did you ever get the royalty situation figured out?" But like
Right.
I didn't want to because like just in case it hadn't like to open up a wound or like turn like a bat sour the mood or whatnot. But like
Right.
Yeah, it's
How
interesting.
was Stackpole? We haven't talked about Stackpole at all.
he was amazing, honestly.
Well, I want to ask Brian since he's the big Stackpole fan here.
Well, it's not the first time I met with him, but it is the
Oh,
first
really? I
time
didn't know.
we've had an extended conversation with him. So Stackpole lives in Arizona, and he's frequently at the convention every summer. And that's where I met him for the first time. I met him a couple of times there. So I already had all of the stuff I wanted autographed by him, so I didn't have to lug that along with me, which turned out to be a good thing because apparently Joe's, supernatural encounters turned out to be an encyclopedia that I barely had room for in my luggage.
Yeah.
But no, Stackpole was great. He answered all his questions seriously. He expanded on all the answers quite a bit too. I'm trying to remember all the questions we asked him, Dylan, because it was a good 20-minute, 25-minute, maybe even half-hour conversation we had with him on the second day when he was just roaming the floor. And
the ones I
good
remember,
guy.
which I think I've said on other streams, but I asked him. So I asked him about writing, like the differences of writing of Bantam and Del Rey, if there were any, like how was the transition, and he said that Bantam was a lot more laid back than Del Rey was. They had a lot of you could basically do what you wanted essentially, and like all conversations between the authors, like that was just something that like they did naturally or inorganically. But for Del Rey, it was things got a lot more strict, and he revealed that like in those early Del Rey meetings about New Jedi Order, that apparently Del Rey didn't want to use Bantam at all.
It was almost like they were wanting to reset the canonicity at that point. Del Rey was,
and
that's what it sounded like he was saying.
That was the thing that, according to him, he and the other authors, mainly Lucina, which also interesting note, all of the authors that talked about Lucino called him Jim Lucino, not James Lucino. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Well, he wasn't there, was he?
No, he wasn't.
Okay,
but
I can feel a little better.
No, it was very much the story he gave us was that that Del Rey was a lot less freedom giving in allowing their authors to do what they wanted, which I could understand that being a very hard transition to make if you're used to being able to write what you wanted to write, and then
I mean, unless your name was Zahn. Zahn's books just feel like.
He even told us that like he basically threatened, like, if it's gonna be like this, then like I'll give you back my advance and like you can find someone else to write these books.
Well, wasn't he also saying something about in the conversations where he was at the table with Del Rey and all the other authors and whatever, a lot of the times they would have to ask him questions. Was it Lucasfilm was asking him questions? Somebody was asking him questions, and it actually got him into hot water because they kept referring to him or asking him questions that should have been directed at Del Rey,
Yeah.
as though he were the authority and not them, and that's got him in some hot water too. So it was a very interesting question to have answered because he definitely went in detail on those.
And he clarified that like it wasn't Lucas. It was specifically Del Rey people. It wasn't Lucasfilm. It wasn't like the Bantam people. Oh, and also I didn't know this actually. The historian the EU historian didn't know this. So Del Rey. So Bantam was actually its own independent company from Penguin Random House prior to the Del Rey buyout. Bantam got absorbed into Random House later. Like that happened after the right switch, which I didn't even know. I thought they were always the same company.
No.
Or
It was like Bantam Spectra or something before.
yeah, Bantam.
Yeah,
Spectra.
I collect a lot of novelizations, and Bantam did several, and they don't say Bantam Random House on them.
So my question for Mike Stackpole during his panel, and I kind of knew what he was going to say before he said it, but I wanted to hear him say it just for myself so I could move on, like properly grieve and move on. For Izard's Revenge, I was like, that happens like between the Thrawn trilogy and before or like between the Thrawn trilogy and Dark Empire. Did you give any thought to trying to maybe foreshadow or link it up with Dark Empire? And he's like, I was like, maybe he's not going to remember, but he remembered. He's like, no. And he's like, for two reasons. Number one, all the characters that I talk about in Izard's Revenge don't appear in Dark Empire. So why would I waste that time? Number two, I don't care for Dark Empire.
he was very blunt about that, from what I understand.
Wedge is in Dark Empire, though.
Yeah, fair enough. Wedges, but I think he was talking more about like all the other rogues and stuff like that. So he wanted.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I don't think Rogue Squadron's mentioned even in the audio dramas.
He
which
did
do
talk
differ slightly from the comics.
So he did also talk about how when writing for the X-Wing comics, Dark Horse for the longest time was like, you've got to put Corrin into the X-Wing comics. You got to put Corrin into the X-Wing comics. You keep having to tell them. It happens like 2 years before the X-Wing books. None of the rogues know Corrin. He doesn't know Wedge. He doesn't know any of them. It doesn't make sense. And like finally he had to like have a couple of the rogues who like weren't in the original 4 X-Wing books like go to Corellia to meet Corrin, so like he could fill the quota without like breaking the continuity.
Yeah,
Jansen and Hobby, I think it was. Yeah, no, he talked about that just to do that.
Apparently, like, so he like also I forget the character's name, but the third that was with them, like Jansen or Hobby or something said like or maybe he said like maybe one day I'll join Rogue Squadron, and then she specifically said over my dead body, and he said he wrote that like as a kind of like to get people up in arms and like, oh wait, is she gonna be next? Like,
definite death flag.
Yeah, the other thing he said about Jansen and Hobby was that he had to like get them out of the way because he wanted to kill off as many rogues as possible. He wanted to have as many rogues as possible to kill off through the series. And Jansen and Hobby would take up 2 slots, and he wasn't going to kill them off, so he had to like push them aside.
Oh yeah, because that was when they didn't kill off movie characters.
Yeah,
unless
except
you were
for when Kevin J. Anderson did.
Killed Kurtzman.
Of course,
yeah.
He once again answered the question, would he write if Legends were to continue? And of course he said yes, so he'd be interested in writing. So yeah, I don't know how many authors got that question asked of them, because I think that's the only one I remember asking was Stackpole that. But did we ask that question of any other authors that were there?
Well, several people asked Stover if he would write new Legends content for donations or something along that line.
Right.
And he said no, he didn't want to get in trouble in hot water with the rights
holder.
Sued. Yeah.
I think he said, I can't because I would get sued, is what he actually said.
I'm trying to think what else Stackpole said. There was something else that I thought was interesting.
The very last question I asked him before he had to go, and it's like, I just have one question. Do you remember? I told him, do you remember, and it's okay if you can't say or if you don't, do you remember whose idea it was to put Boris Bailey in charge of the New Republic for New Jedi Order? And he said he didn't. It might have been Lucino, but he wasn't sure, but he didn't remember.
Right.
And then he talked about how satisfying it was in Izard's Revenge to have Booster slam him up against a bulkhead multiple times.
Yes, he said that with quite a bit of glee in his voice, by the way, so he must have really enjoyed that moment.
I remember what the other Stackpole thing was. He and Tim Zahn would send each other chapters of stuff.
Mhm.
So it was like he was writing. What was he writing at the time? I forgot. But Zahn, he was gonna Jedi, and he wanted to use like Elagos, Akla, and Tim Zahn was writing Vision of the Future and Spectre of the Past, and so they had to like they were collaborating on that, and he had to basically like de-age Elagos like whatever, like 10 years, because it takes place like 10 years before, so that we could see what he was like, back then. And then, it was kind of interesting to hear the collaboration between those two authors specifically.
Well, they wrote together.
Yeah, they did.
They
Absolutely.
wrote Mara Jade by the Emperor's Hand together.
So they were, he said they're friends. Like they would go out for dinner and they would hang out at cons and stuff like that. So
other stories that he told me about was like he confirmed the story of when he was writing I, Jedi, calling Kevin J. Anderson to ask him if in the Young Jedi Knights series he was doing anything with X-13 Sim Temple, because he wanted Korn to blow it up, basically getting like the clear to do that. Because I also asked him about, you said that like at the end of Back to War you gave Booster the Errant Venture because you knew that Zahn needed it for the Hand of Thrawn trilogy, and he said yes, that was the thing that happened, but that it wasn't Zahn that told him that. It was like one of the editors that told, or someone at Bantam had told him to do that.
Yeah.
And then when I also asked him how was like handing off the X-Wing series to Alston, he said it was so easy because I knew Alston already. We had like one conversation that was basically, here's where the story is, here's where it could like go, and like he just went off and like nailed it. Is essentially like what he said.
Mm-hmm. You had a lot of good things to say about Austin.
They were really good friends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He was the one who brought Alston in. There was this story where he said like you don't, because they invited Alston for lunch. Did you just talk about this, Dylan? Did I just like totally miss this?
No, this was on Matt Wilkins has talked about this on here before.
Yeah,
but
they
go
invited
ahead.
Alston for lunch, and he's like, nah, I'm whatever, I'm busy. And then Stackpole was rooming with him at the time because they were at a convention together, and he's like, you don't turn down a lunch with the publisher ever.
Yeah,
it's so
that's a
funny.
one.
No, we had good conversations though. But Stackpole was great. He usually is, very easy person to talk to. If you got questions for him, he'll more than likely have the answers for you.
I think, kind of going back, we've already talked about some stories, but I think my biggest surprise was Sean Stewart, because there was a lot of things that. So apparently he had never been to a convention before, or a Star Wars convention specifically, and he was not aware of how popular his book was, because he seemed to have thought that like because he only got to write one book and because they never called him again that it wasn't popular and like they didn't want him. But he was very surprised that like I said this on other channels and streams about this, but like on Saturday they had Sean Stewart signing like at the same time as Michael Stackpole, so everyone obviously had books for Stackpole to sign, right? Because he has like, they were getting like their 8 or 9 things that Stackpole had written signed, but every single person in line had Yoda Dark Rendezvous with them for Sean to sign. Yep. And how like he just wasn't expecting that. And also someone he said this story at the panel. I've seen the panel now. I saw the video where he talked about how like the character of Scout in Yoda Dark Rendezvous, how he had like based it off of his daughter sort of, and like he had called Lucasfilm to tell them like, don't kill Scout off please, and they said yeah, okay. And then someone apparently told him that like, did you know that Karen Travis had Scout show up at the end of Republic Commando, like after Order 66 happened, which he didn't. And apparently she had sat in at one of his like writing seminars where he talked about that, and that's where she got the idea to bring Scout into Republic Commando.
That's so funny that he was her teacher, essentially.
Yeah.
He was like beyond nice. I mean, the two things that surprised me, because I've been to my fair share of cons, but the two things that surprised me about this con was that every single person was super nice. Every single author.
Yep.
I cannot fault one. And I would tell you behind the scenes even, but like not a single one
I didn't get the feeling that any single one of them didn't want to be there. Like they
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
wanted to be there, and they were all happy to be there, from what
Yeah.
I could tell anyway.
Absolutely. And then the second thing is that they all remember their work.
Yeah.
Sean Stewart said he reread Yoda Dark Rendezvous like right
Cool.
before the con.
Yeah,
just
on the
to
plane.
remind himself. And then he was like, I don't know who's gonna win this fight. Where like in the beginning, Scout is in some kind of martial arts tournament with the other Padawans, and
Mhm.
he's like, I think it's gonna be the main character, but I don't remember.
It's great.
No, it was good. It was good. So, I'm sure we have other author stories too, but before I forget it, one of the more interesting things we were doing at the Twin Suns booth was we were asking everybody, where they would suggest people start with Legends, as what the best starting point is reading wise. And, we got a lot of typical answers, but one of the responses we got was not one I ever expected to see at this convention. Legends Con, you would expect a bunch of Legends fans to show up. But what we actually found is that, of course, there were those, but there was a not insignificant portion of the attendees who had never gotten into Legends until just recently and had not read yet any of the stories. And we were, at least I was very surprised by how many there were. It was crazy.
We did have someone recommend the Ahsoka novel.
We had, the boring correct answer, as we put it. I think one, of course, Heir to the Empire.
I actually, this will be great for the audio listeners, but I'll read them off anyway. But I'll show for the people on screen.
While you're pulling that up, I was going to say the Ahsoka novel is it has something in common with the Legends books now, is that it's pretty much non-canon anymore.
Oh God, yeah. He is completely. I'll tell you what, he did that more dirty than he did any of his tie-in stuff in Legends. He's
We had
completely redone that whole book
Yeah.
in the span of like 3 years.
Who read that, or who wrote that one?
E.K. Johnston, one of the worst
Johnston.
authors ever. What is
So these are the survey results. We asked everyone what are books that you would recommend to someone who never read a Star Wars book before. These are the results. These are all the ones that are like actually books that we can donate at Twin Suns, and then these are ones that like we can't, either because they're out of print or are stupidly expensive or are, in the case of the Ahsoka novel, not a Legends book. But Heir to the Empire, no surprise. 13 people recommended it. Rogue Squadron, X-Wing Rogue Squadron had 6. Path of Destruction 5. Plagueis, Shadows of the Empire, and Kenobi all with 4. The Old Republic Revan, Truce Bakura, and the Paradise Snare at 3. I, Jedi, Revenge of the Sith, Jedi Search, and Tales from Mos Eisley Cantina at 2. And then Ray Squadron, Hard Contact, Children of the Jedi.
Who
Planet of
said
Twilight,
Wild Space? Who did that?
Tales from
me.
Jabba's Palace, Splinter, Tatooine Ghost,
Matt Wilkins.
Shatterpoint, The Force Unleashed, Wild Space, Cloak of Deception, Mandalorian Armor, Labyrinth of Evil, Dark Lord, Rise of Darth Vader, Ambush at Corellia, Courtship of Prince Leia, Lando, Adventures, Maul Lockdown, and Dawn of the Jedi, all with 1.
Speaking
lot-
of books
lot of
that
opinions.
to backpedal a little bit, I just want to do an aside here on L. Neil Smith's Lando books.
Mhm.
He wrote each of those in a month.
It's crazy.
That's crazy, isn't it?
And it was apparently so miserable he never wanted to write a Star Wars book again.
So, fun fact: while we were at Legends Con, Wave 10 of Essential Legends collection leaked.
Yep.
Isard's Revenge, the Final Republic Commando book, 501st Imperial Commando, and the Adventures of Lando Calrissian.
Yeah.
If only they would do audiobooks for those. Oh, wait. That would require actually making
Okay,
money.
so this is another thing. One of the Del Rey people on their personal account replied to someone who was asking for the audiobooks and with "Stay tuned."
Yep. So that might still be happening. We just don't
Oh,
know
that
which
would-
ones.
Like, I would love to see a Yoda Dark Rendezvous audiobook, because that was the wave where they stopped doing it. And I was like, no, that's the wave.
I
we
know,
wanted
because
to.
we're also going to get a hard contact one, too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We've gotten a twofer.
Yep.
Because, I mean, aside from Sam, what's his face, who was Star Killer doing the Shadowhunter
Yeah.
audiobook, the others were fantastic. I just hate his Darth Maul voice.
Oh, he hammed it up for
The
that
white
audio.
hot intensity of 1,000 suns.
I didn't realize that he was going to read the entire book in Maul's voice. I thought he was going to do like his and then just like read Maul's lines in Maul's voice, but he reads the entire book in Maul's voice.
Yeah, until he talks about, and then he does the Emperor's voice,
Right. Yeah.
which I don't like. His Emperor. His Emperor's okay. He's gotten better with that. They should just have Mike Stolkasa from Red Letter Media voice the Emperor. If they're not going to have Ian McDermott do it, just get the guy from Red Letter Media. He does a great Palpatine voice.
Just have like one of like the 3 actually talented ones do the audiobooks that they have.
Yeah. There's Jonathan Davis. There's Mark Thompson.
And Kelly Marie Tran. Oh, I'm sorry.
Did she?
Does she do audiobooks?
Yeah, she did one, and she took 5 Xanax before doing it. It was for a Rose Tico tie-in YA book, and it is hands down the worst Star Wars audiobook I've ever heard. Yeah. Kelly Marie Tran. It's like she snorted Ambien and Xanax before recording.
This isn't LegisCon, but something like I was looking up while I can't remember why, but like the conversation came up of like the conversation came up of the fact that like Joe Schreiber had written the Last Jedi Junior novelization,
Yeah.
and then I looked him up, and apparently he's written like 3 or 4 other junior novelizations for New Canon now, and I'm just like, why Schreiber of all people?
He probably likes it. It's different. You know, Stephen King wrote a YA book, and then he put the F-bomb in, and they said it couldn't be a YA
Jeremy,
book.
it's
not.
Who had the Jedi Search misprint that they were
Yeah.
showing around?
It was our friend Zach, Christopher Nelson's #1 fan. He's as he goes by on and Christopher, that's his handle on like Noah's server.
On the Discord.
Yeah. But I also think like Chris Nelson actually also claims that he's his #1 fan. So he said that he's the reason why he came back to YouTube. Zach had a copy. You want to tell it, Dylan?
Yeah, so he had a copy of Jedi Search by Kevin J. Anderson that the first like 30 or 40 pages of it was actually a Stephen King book.
Yeah, Dolores Claiborne, I think.
Dolores
it's a good
Claiborne.
Stephen King book.
So yeah, it was like Jedi Search by Stephen King, basically. So he was showing it to like, he showed it to, he brought it to the signing that like Stackpole and Stewart were at, and they both laughed. And I think Stackpole even said, "Does Kevin know?"
Yeah, I think he's getting like every single author he can to sign it. So he got Stackpole and Stewart to sign it. He probably got Stover to sign it as well. It's just so funny. And then Dylan was there, and I think this video Brennan put on his channel. But you had your copy of the Crystal Star / Witchfire.
Yeah, and I was showing that off because after that, because I found out that Abel G. Pena, who was there, really loves the Crystal Star. So I'm like, oh, I've got it. So I brought it to show him. It's like, did you hear about it? So he hadn't heard about it. Joe hadn't heard about it, and Stackpole, when I showed him as well, he didn't know about it either.
None of those guys.
Another
had heard
Stackpole
about that.
story. I asked Stackpole if he was aware of the misprints with the Essential Legends collection. And he was. He apparently got an email from Del Rey apologizing for the one in Wedge's Gamble, where they basically copy pasted Drew Carbishin's About the Author section. He did not know about Back to War, crediting him as having written Vector Prime, though. I broke the news to him on that one.
Yep, I have to give him my congratulations for killing off Chewbacca.
Yeah, and the apology was basically, "We're so sorry this happened. We'll fix it on the second printing."
Right.
Idiots.
Have they? I don't even think they have.
I don't think it has a second printing yet, which is
I don't
interesting.
think it does either. Our Barnes and Noble here where I live is moving to another building, so everything's on sale, which was really nice because all the EU stuff is selling like crazy and none of the new canon is.
That's awesome.
But
I also
there
asked-
was a couple misprinted Essential Legends books.
I'm like slowly remembering all the questions I asked Stackpole. So I also asked him if he remembered when exactly it was determined that Mar was going to be Luke's wife, and he didn't know that. He heard a story that apparently Zahn said that he would only like write the books if like that was if like they made that a thing, which he even said that doesn't make sense because that was supposed to be the last Star Wars books, like the Thrawn trilogy, and he at that point when he was writing the Thrawn trilogy, you know, he didn't have the reputation and star power to be able to make demands like that to Lucasfilm and get them answered. So it would have had to have happened after, but
Right.
that by the time he came on, which was 95, 96, it was definitely like a known thing, but he doesn't know at what point it became like this
Well-
is going to happen. We just can't spoil it until it happens.
Did anyone ask him about Union? I know that no one wants to talk about their worst work, and because
Yeah.
I'm curious how much control he had over that. Because I don't think he had any control.
I don't think we asked him about the Union, but I know Dylan got it signed.
We mentioned Union.
He did talk about Union during his panel. He said that he was honored to marry off a cultural icon.
Mhm.
And he said that, you know, I don't know, that he took it seriously, but he didn't talk about whether or not they were controlling what he wrote or.
I made a joke about him putting all the rogues in winning tuxedos and getting them in a firefight halfway through the comic.
I forgot that happened. What I always remember is that there's a royal guard that's part of that terrorist cell.
Yeah.
And he gets into his uniform and he fights Mara, and it happens off screen.
Yeah.
And it's played as a joke. Luke's like, "Did you have to break every bone in his body?" And I'm like, "Well, could we have seen it?" Okay. And then Luke gets in a bar fight.
Yeah, so the story behind me getting Union side, because I didn't own Union, but I was kind of perusing all the shops, like the vendors, and the vendor right next to us had issue 1 of Union for $10, and I thought, yeah, why not?
I mean that's up for pre-order right now in the Epic collection, so they're finally going ahead and printing that.
Yeah. That vendor was great. I bought 2 figures. I bought Jaina Solo Black Series and Darth Revan Black Series off of that vendor, like right away.
Yep.
Oh, dope.
Smart decision, because we all knew if anything good was there, it was going to be gone quickly.
Yeah, the vendors, unfortunately, I don't think they got their return back. Or
No, the guys next to us didn't do so great, unfortunately, overall. But I think the overall on Legends Con was that we thought the author, the guest lists were good. We thought that the panels were good overall. We thought that the show floor itself was a little bit lacking.
Yeah.
Was the general feedback I had heard.
Let's get into that, because you two, Dylan and Brian, you primarily ran the Twin Suns booth. How was that?
so I think the show floor was, I think, a 2-pronged issue. The first was the panel schedule was really packed, and there was like pretty much always a panel that you had to be, like you would want to be at happening.
Mhm.
So there wasn't a lot of reason to walk the show floor except to get a signature. But they basically had like 3 rows of they had like three rows, right? There was the front row that had the bookstore and where the signings was happening, a middle row, and then like a back row, or an aisle, right? So like there wasn't, but because like the book signings was at the front where the front door was, there wasn't really a lot of reasons to go to the back aisles. So I think that there was a lot of just foot traffic that just wasn't there. But I also think the other half of it was, I don't think the vendors were properly briefed on what kind of con it was going to be, because the bookstore, for example, probably had about 60% new canon books to about 40% Legends books. Like
Oof.
there was an entire table of like canon books, and then like the very corner of that table was like Legends books, and then they had another table that had the Legends books from all the authors that were there,
Right.
that people get signed. And a lot of other vendors, like the vendor next to us, he had comics. He had like 4 long boxes of comics, but like half of one long box was like Legend stuff, and the rest of it was all like canon stuff. And he had some action figures as well, as he said, but they got picked pretty clean really early, and there was kind of just like this random hodgepodge of stuff left. And I think a lot of the other vendors were like that too, where there was a Lego guy, but he didn't really have all that much to sell. I remember it was more of just a diorama. There was like a t-shirt shop. I don't know what good they did because they were kind of at the other end of the convention. Am I missing any big ones?
I mean, lots of little, pin vendors and whatnot. And,
Yeah.
501st was there with a booth of theirs, a few cosplaying booths. I think that was more or less, typical convention type booths, but not really much focused, I guess, Legends focused. Or I think Dylan's right. They weren't exactly briefed on exactly what was the intention behind this convention, which is a little bit of a shame because I think they might have done better if they would have brought more Legends focused stuff.
Yeah.
And you guys, you guys did pretty well, though. I think.
Oh yeah, right. And I was going to get to that after I just said I think Dylan's right on the layout of the convention, where you had almost everything that you were going to go to the show floor for was right at the entrance. So there really wasn't a lot of point to go through the rest of it if you ever had the time to go through the rest of it. But Twin Suns, even despite that, we were in the back row, what we thought was going to be the front row because of how things were presented originally. That was our
because there's like a bunch of doors like on that one side, so we thought that people were going to be entering through those doors, but actually, like, as well, just how the convention was like split off, like all of the panel rooms were to one side of the exhibit floor, so like you didn't even get foot traffic of like, whereas like other cons, right, there's like convention sites on either side of the exhibit hall, so you'll still get natural foot traffic of people going from one panel to the other because they have to cross the show floor, but we didn't even get that because they were all basically in the same spot.
Now, on the other hand, the show floor, there wasn't a lot there, so it didn't really take long for people to go around and see everything. So I still think we got a lot of foot traffic. I do have concerns if they try to do something similar again in the future, and they don't rearrange things a little better. There might be some problems there, but Twin Suns, we did pretty well at our booth. We had basically three main things going on. We already mentioned the survey. But as we always do whenever we show up to a convention, is we like to collect books to donate somewhere locally as kind of a thank you to the community for hosting the convention. We did pretty well with that. I think we had 63 books in total by the time the convention was over, which is more books than we actually collected at our first celebration appearance in half the time. So it was a pretty successful thing. Those went to Boys and Girls Club of Burbank and the Greater East Valley.
It ended up
had the joy of doing that.
It ended up being 66 because someone gave us Bounty Hunter Wars books 2 and 3 and not 1, and someone gave us Public Commandos books 2, 4, and 5. Right. So I added books 1 and 3 of Republic Commando and book 1 of Bounty Hunter Wars for my own collection, just so that they would have complete sets of those books.
Right.
Someone also I gave this away earlier. I'll keep you anonymous this time, but Jeremy, someone donated all of KOTOR Sans Vector in trade paperbacks. I
saw the post on that.
Crazy.
It's one of those moments when you're a Twin Suns volunteer and you see something being donated and you're like, that's gonna take all the willpower I have to donate this one.
Someone donated The Rising Force. We had 2 different people donate Young Jedi Knights, Shadow Academy. We got Shadow Academy on its own, and we got the first 3. We got a 3-in-1 that had books 1, 2, and 3.
Mm-hmm. It was awesome, and we had to count that as 1, even though it was technically 3.
Yes.
But I know Dylan had to make sure to tell the people that we were donating to, please keep these together. Please keep these together. Please keep these together.
Did you rubber band them together?
No.
I would have done that.
I didn't have rubber bands. And also rubber bands, especially with paperbacks.
Fair enough.
Yeah. But it was, so, I mean, and of course, the last thing we had going on is our current ongoing fundraiser. We were letting people know about that. So, I can go into that later towards the end of the stream here. But, all 3 of those things, they did pretty well overall. And we did have quite a few people come by the booth just to see us, which was always awesome. I know there were a lot of people we were meeting in person, which was actually probably the highlight of the convention, is when you meet the people you've been talking to online, you actually meet them in person. It's always fun. So that's, for that reason alone, the convention was a win.
It was super weird because usually this has happened this has happened in the last celebration too, but not as much as here. Usually when I meet people who recognize me, it's like I also recognize them back. It was really weird being at a convention where people know you but you don't know them. If that makes it, like
Yeah. Yes. No, I was right there with you, Dylan. A lot of it's kind of embarrassing, frankly. It's like you hear all these people just enjoying everything that you're doing, for Twin Suns or otherwise as your videos. They know you a lot from your videos, actually. It was somewhat embarrassing.
I squandered my one opportunity to do the commando thing with Arnold Schwarzenegger, where he's like, "Dylan, you son of a bitch," and then just like clasp his arm.
Okay, now I gotta ask, how was meeting Dylan in person?
He's
I'll
amazing.
tell you my story of meeting Dylan in person.
oh god.
No, he's
Let
amazing.
me just recline a little bit here. And,
Yeah.
Okay, go for it, Jeremy.
So Dylan and I ran into each other at the Dallas airport
Mm-hmm.
because his flight was. I had a massive layover going to see Matt Wilkins. I think I had been there for 2 hours before
Mhm.
you landed, and when you got there, he was in the middle of listening to Fate of the Jedi Outcast,
Oh,
and he
God.
didn't want to talk to me.
I was when you're in the middle of a chapter in an audiobook, it's like, hold on, it's like 5 minutes till you get to the end of the chapter.
And so he just sat there, just staring off next to me. And I like took some I think I still have them somewhere. My Snapchat videos saved.
And then after that, we
Making
went to
fun
the
of Dylan and he wasn't paying attention.
and then we had lunch at the airport Applebee's. I remember that.
No, it was a TGI Fridays. But
Oh, that's right, a TJ. Yep.
It was horrible. It was horrible food.
Well, it's airport food and it's a TGI Fridays. That's like a double whammy of.
Yeah, that was
Were you
bad.
expecting better?
I never eaten a TGI Fridays. I didn't know what to expect. I still haven't eaten that one ever since.
Yeah.
I think the three of us barely ate those 2 days.
Oh,
Mhm.
I had one meal a day the whole time I was
Oh,
there.
I still have I bought 2 of these things of peanuts. I've made it almost completely through this one, but this was our like convention snack. I bought 2
My
of these.
God.
And I'm like, oh yeah, we'll have these
Dylan,
to
that's
snack on at the
restraint.
booth.
You've come a long way from eating all of the cheese balls. Cheese girl.
I've heard
Well,
that.
that's just something I've learned ever since we did our first celebration appearance is that you're just not going to have time to eat. You're just
No.
gonna
Yeah.
just eat when you can, but
You're not-
you're not going to have time to eat.
You're not going to even think about eating a lot of the
No.
time.
And you're right. I wasn't hungry most
The
of the time.
con's gonna
but I was
be
too
over.
busy,
You're just be like, oh man, I'm like so hungry right now.
right.
Why am
I got
eating
back
here?
home and I was like, I can't believe how much I'm eating. I need to stop.
Yeah. I didn't even have the excuse of being at a booth like you guys did, right? I mean, there was just the way it worked was like panel after panel after signing
Right.
after panel after signing after panel, and by the end of the day, I felt like it was like a working day, just
Yeah.
running from
Well,
one
it's-
thing to the next.
Yeah.
It's a good thing there weren't any food vendors because they would have had no business for nobody being
I think
there.
it would have been nice if it was a little more. If there was a little more breathing room. I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. No, the panels were packed, and Twin Suns had a panel each day too. Our panel was just to kind of inform the community about who we were, just in case they didn't know, and a lot of people didn't know. Our panel on Saturday was attended by a lot of people we knew, but a few people we didn't, and we thought it went well overall. I think that video is floating around somewhere.
Yeah, it's on Only
Um,
Good Games, I believe.
Only
Has
Good
it.
Games, that's right, has it. And we thought it went well overall. Second panel day, though, it was kind of a great example of how packed the panels were. We were directly assigned the time directly the same as the new Jedi Order panel, which we knew meant we were going to see
Which
zero
had-
people.
Which had Stackpole, Stover, and Stradley on it.
Mhm. There was
Yeah.
no
Oh,
way
there's-
we had any chance.
I haven't watched that yet.
They hasn't been.
I'm
filmed.
wondering if Stradley threw a tantrum because I know
So they wouldn't let anyone record it.
Yeah,
Oh,
But official recordings from the convention, I think, are supposed to be coming out over the next, I would assume, few months.
they did
Um,
record it, but
I'm
but
curious because Stradley didn't play ball with them.
Yeah,
he's still a
that's
little
what
salty. I think he's
that
still-
was the talk because I remember seeing that and like messaging people. It's like Don't they know New Jedi Order is kind of a sore subject with Stradley?
So I know Dylan and I didn't attend that, but Marcel, were you at that panel?
I was at that panel, and so Shay Standifer, I think, was the one who moderated the panel, and I almost feel like, well, maybe she was in there because she's friends with Stradley, and she's there to keep the peace. But he came off as, I think he's still a bit sour about it. He started off the panel like basically talking about how the New Jedi Order was originally a dark horse idea, and how he was the one who came up with the let's kill the family dog. Actually, originally they wanted to kill Luke. I think we all knew this, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
But I think like basically they sent it up the chain, and then George said something along the lines of like, "Thou shalt not kill Luke."
Yeah, as I recall, he gave them the options of Chewbacca or Lando.
Right. And they said, well, why don't we kill the family dog? And so it sort of went from there. But I remember like later on in the panel, Stover was asked something about like the story. He's like, it's not my story. And he was like obviously still kind of upset about it a bit.
You mean Stradley?
Yeah, Stradley, sorry, not Stover.
I was gonna say Stover wrote one of the best books.
Stover in that panel talked about, I think, or maybe it was his own panel, but he talked about writing Traitor, and he's like, I'm really gonna fuck with everybody with this book, and I'm gonna love it. And that's he was happy about that because he knew it was gonna mess with people, and he brought up how back in the day people did freak out on the message boards because
Mhm.
Rogier says there is no dark side, and people like lost their minds about that.
One of the greatest things ever brought up in Star Wars.
Yeah.
It's just, one of these days we'll just have to we'll all be on here and we'll just read every New Jedi Order book, and it'll be a book club. and I will force us all to read Invasion together.
Oh God!
You did ask me apart. Did anyone ask him about Invasion?
We asked Stradley about Invasion, and Stradley said, I think the question was, and it came from us, like it came from our group of people. The question was, well, what happens to Finn Gelfridi, like what was the storyline going to be with Invasion? And he says he has no idea. That was with the writer. I forget his name, Tom Taylor, maybe.
So yeah.
And he says he has no idea where they were going with that, so he couldn't answer.
So I think it was Brennan. Speaking of things we got confirmation of, but I think it was Brennan that asked Colonel Becco about the C-3PO is the IG unit in Legacy 2 theory. And she said that was not the intention, but it was the intention that it was a droid that knew Han.
Yeah. So he was thinking like maybe Bollocks from the Brian Daly series.
Oh, Bollocks or his could be his servant droid that shows up in Dark Empire for 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And then
The Dark Empire or Dark Empire 2? It's Dark Empire because that's when we find out that Boba Fett's still alive.
And that she doesn't know if this would actually have happened, but the intent was because the original Legacy is about a Skywalker who is reluctant and eventually takes up his mantle, like it basically eventually rises to the occasion, although they're reluctant to take on the mantle of being a Skywalker at first. That Legacy 2 was going to be the opposite of someone who thinks that they're a Skywalker and wants to rise to the occasion, but is later revealed that they're actually not. So basically the intention was that Anya Solo isn't actually a descendant of the Solos.
Yeah.
Potentially.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting too. When I heard that, I was like, whoa. That would have been quite the dynamic between the two of them.
Yeah. And she said that.
Oh, go ahead. I think you're going to say the same thing.
Were you going to talk about Cade?
Yeah.
Okay, go for it. Do it.
Yes. She said that eventually they would have liked to have them team up, but they really wanted to get her to like stand on her own for a bit, which to me reads as issues 1 to 50 would be Anya Solo, and then they do a war mini arc where like she meets Cade.
Oh no.
One of the other things.
You mean the worst thing they could possibly do? Actually, the worst thing would be Darth Maul and Darth Talon teaming up and showing up in it.
That was
Lucas's idea.
Yeah.
The cloning of Darth Maul again.
Quick aside, we actually did have a Cade Skywalker cosplay at the convention, which was kind of exciting because I don't think I've seen one of those before.
Yep.
Oh, nice.
One of the other things that came out of the NJO panel, Michael Kogi was an intern at the time, and they used to send him manuscripts of the books, and he read the first Nightfall book. And so we asked him, well, what do you remember from it? This was by, I think, like Michael Jan Friedman or Jan Friedman.
Can we back up a minute here?
Yeah.
I only just discovered that Nightfall existed.
Yeah.
What can we pitch this here of what this is?
Sure.
Like I only just discovered it. I discovered it today.
Oh, okay.
It was a trilogy of books that I believe was supposed to take place in year 2 of NJO. So in that sort of like balance point, edge of victory block of books.
Okay.
Because that year you'll see is kind of thinner in terms of like the books than the rest of the years, because each year is sort of like 4 paperbacks and a hardcover, and then that year was I think only like 2 paperbacks and a hardcover or something along those lines.
Yeah, and then the Emissaries of the Void gamer short series,
Right.
which takes place also by Greg Keyes.
Also,
It takes place-
Recovery, I think, takes place right after Balance Point.
Yeah, that too.
Recovery, yeah. And the intention was for NJO originally to be 25 to 30 books, but they ended paring it down to 19, as we know. And sorry, hold on a second. Let me clear my throat. And so eventually what happened was Nightfall was nixed. We found out because, well, we asked about whether or not there were going to be Iron Knights in Nightfall, because there was always the theory that there might have been Iron Knights in Nightfall. Michael Kogi said to us that he did not read or recall reading anything about Iron Knights in the first manuscript. But he said that it was about Danny Quee being a reporter and I guess reporting on the events of the Vong War. And the reason why it was nixed and the trilogy was nixed was because thematically it didn't fit with the rest of the series, which is really supposed to kind of focus on the Vong and the Jedi, the Vong versus the Jedi. And this kind of was a huge tonal shift in the series. And so they thought, we're not going to go ahead with this trilogy because it's going to take away from the momentum.
Interesting.
Still would have liked to see it though.
For sure. And there apparently, I guess Michael Kogi thinks that there might be still a copy of it out there with Lucasfilm for the first book at the very least.
Interesting.
Maybe one day.
Yeah. So no, I mean, you kind of getting a good feel for what Legends Con was like, though, right? Because you have all these stories coming out, questions being answered by fans who know what they're talking about, and authors who actually know how to answer these questions that they're being asked.
Things were discussed that we will never talk about on here. I'm sorry, everyone, but there are things that I was told like immediately while this was going on that you will never. I won't say never because.
Mm-hmm.
Infamously, Dylan and I knew that Lightsider was a book for years before any of the rest of y'all knew. Was I the one that told you, Brian, that it existed?
It was either you or maybe Matt, actually. I don't remember.
I think
it was one of those, you
We
keep
were
this
on
hush
the call,
hush.
and I asked Matt if I could talk about it.
Oh, that's right. That's
I
what it is.
sat on the floor and read it.
No, we occasionally hear stuff like that, and we're not allowed to say anything. So,
yeah, I think people expect that now.
Yeah.
Just check.
I
just make sure to.
Noah was mad that I had known about it for so long.
If you want to know what you're talking about, just look in the background of Matt's next video. There'll probably be a teaser in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Chris Nelson
Enough with
flashing
that.
across the screen.
Enough with that. What are we reading, everyone?
Good question.
Does Dylan know how to read? That's the next question.
Oh, good. He's reading the encyclopedia. Okay.
I technically I read I looked like the first 10 or 15 pages, and I rapidly reach the conclusion that I am not nearly well read enough to understand this, so I've got more homework to do until I can finish
But
this.
here's the thing: like, there's that entire section in the back of the book that gives you all the references.
Yeah, there is 100
Is there a
pages.
glossary for EU references in the back of Supernatural?
Yes,
Yes.
there's
I expected nothing
there's
less.
a 100-page some odd like of all
End notes. Yeah.
of end notes and like all of that.
Yes, and that's not a lie. That it is in there.
I'm also reading still reading because I read really slow these days. I don't have a lot of time. Shadow Games.
Okay.
I am at the part where he gets back to Tatooine and Han is still there and is like, well, why can't you use my ship? And that's where I am.
Okay.
If you know Shadow Games.
I do. One of my favorite
Okay.
books. Real quickly before I talk about what books I'm into, Scott Johnson asked, why specifically wasn't the NJO panel allowed to be recorded? Did they say the reason that we were given was because they wanted the authors and Mr. Stradley to be as candid as possible without feeling like they were being recorded. Like, let's just have a conversation. That was the reason that was given. I don't know how valid
Off the
that is.
record comments are permitted.
Yeah, because I feel like people were probably still recording under the table. But Only Good Games, who's recorded a lot of these, it was respectful and, put his phone away as requested. He was also in the front row, so it would have been kind of hard to hide the fact that he was recording.
But I do know, like I said earlier, that the convention did official recordings of, I think, every panel. So they're going to be releasing those later.
Yeah, and that goes for NJO as well. They did a recording of that, so I would be shocked if they didn't release it after.
Hmm.
What are you
So-
reading, Brian?
I am currently in between books. I've been doing a lot of those light novels, just digital things, quick things I can read in the few hours I have, here or there. But I think my next read is probably going to be my annual reread of iJedi. Maybe do Jedi Academy trilogy first, though, because it's been a while since I've read that one.
That would be interesting to get all of iJedi and then Jedi Academy and then iJedi. Just
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Because it's been a while since I've read both of them, and reading them in close proximity to each other would be entertaining in a way.
And then play Jedi Outcast.
And then play
Yeah.
Jedi Outcast. Why not?
Jedi
No.
Outcast and Jedi Academy. I just played through Jedi Academy about a month ago.
Jedi Outcast. Yeah, I mean, those are great games. Great games.
Sorry.
But no, a lot of my time right now is going to writing my own stuff, and then also I've been playing a lot of Starfield, so that's been fun.
Okay.
I have a very ambitious reading schedule, none of which involves Star Wars books.
Hey, welcome to my life.
I right now I'm almost done Mr. Mercedes by Stephen King, which is
Okay, you're getting into the whole Bill Hodges.
yeah.
And are you doing this to discover why Noah hates Holly Gibney as a character?
Absolutely, and I already have a good idea as to why that's the case.
Let's just say she's best in that trilogy. Just wait till you read The Outsider, and then she shows up in the second half for no reason, and then it just feels like a different book.
Yeah,
'Cause The Outsider was a good book until she showed up.
I mean, even Mr. Mercedes, like, she just shows up out of nowhere, and it's just okay. Kind of a tonal shift in the book.
In case y'all are wondering, that's Stephen King's pet character.
That's his like
Every
Ahsoka
good
Wano.
author's got to have a pet character.
That's his Ahsoka.
That's right.
Or
Or you're doing it wrong, right?
Troy Denning, that would be Saba Sabatine.
Ugh, yeah,
Can do no wrong.
and Stackpole's is Corin Horn.
Corn
Of course.
Horn, yeah. And so I bought a bunch of L. Neil Smith books that I found at a used bookstore in Seattle before I went to Legends Con, and so I'm hoping to start reading his books, his non-Star Wars books, and then just a lot of King, trying to catch up so I can read Holly and suffer alongside Noah.
I refused. He tried to push that on me and tried to have a skip all the 80s and 90s 2000s stuff so we could read Holly first, and I said no. I'm not doing that. I want to just suffer and be miserable through the 2010s King up until now, where there's only 2 good books. Actually 3. There's 3 good Stephen King books written in the last.
What, Joyland,
Oh, 4. I forgot Joyland was a book.
Revival,
Revival. Wind
Fairy
Through the
Tale.
Keyhole.
Went through the keyhole.
What was the one you said?
Fairy Tale.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then there's first half of Outsiders, a good book. But yeah, no. Stephen King. I mean, he wrote his worst book in the 2010s. That'd be Sleeping Beauties, where he remade The Stand, but with SJW politics.
Mm.
Yeah, he's very busy on Twitter these days.
He's been busy on Twitter since 2016. They need to take his computer away, give him a typewriter, so he can finish the Dark Tower and the third Talisman book.
That's right. I actually just read the Talisman for the first time before Legends Con. I finished it in August.
What'd you think?
I liked it. I liked it a lot. It was a journey. Yeah.
Black House is funky.
Yeah, I haven't gotten there yet.
It's a Dark Tower tie-in that's never brought up in the Dark Tower. And it's frustrating. And it feels like proto Doctor Sleep. Like he didn't quite have the idea for Doctor Sleep yet. And so he and Peter Straub wrote Black House, and then when it came time to write Doctor Sleep, he just pulls some ideas from Black House and he puts them in Doctor Sleep. Have you read Doctor Sleep?
I've seen the movie, but I haven't read it yet. No.
Oh, it's okay.
Okay.
It's pretty heinous what they do to the children. A bunch of soul-sucking vampires that attack kids with The Shining, mutilate them, and they disguise themselves as old people in Winnebago caravans, which is really creepy and an interesting idea.
Yeah, I remember it from the movie.
This does not sound like something I would read.
No, no, you need to read The Shining first if you're going to get anything out of it.
It's a sequel to The Shining, which I was surprised about. The movie actually, I think, pulls some scenes from the original Shining movie.
Yeah, it tries to be both a sequel to the book and the movie. It doesn't quite get them both because, I mean, they are two very different things.
Yeah, I think famously Stephen King doesn't like the Shining movie.
Oh, he shit talks it still. He started shit talking it again when Kubrick died.
Yeah.
Because they came to a truce about it. Because Kubrick just rewrote the Shining script that Stephen King gave him, like infamously. Changed
that actually reminded me about another thing that came out of the con because we're talking about expanded universes. I think it was Henry Gilroy who said George Lucas read the comics. We knew that, but like he made it sound like he read a lot of them.
I was under the impression he read pretty much all of them.
That's what it sounded like to me,
Mm-hmm.
based on the way that he answered that question.
He read new canon comics too.
That's interesting.
Well, he bought a Star Wars #1, and he went to a local comic shop, and some people I was acquainted with back in the day ran into him in Marin County and took pictures with him.
I guess comics are low effort, right? They don't require you to expend a lot of time.
Yeah.
He's always been a fan of art. You know, he has Kennedy's art.
Well, he had that art book with the porn drawing, Star Wars porn drawings in it. You know.
I was talking about that book today. Not the porn drawing, but I always think about that whenever I think about that book.
Well, yeah, it's that, and we find the fate of Ahsoka.
That's what I was talking about. Yeah, the fate of Ahsoka. There's that art piece.
That book's canon. Just so damn peculiar.
Well, what are you reading, Jeremy?
Okay, so I just finished the Jenna Zan Arbor arc of Jedi Apprentice, which was the whole Qui-Gon kidnapping arc. I finished the 13th book yesterday. I thought it was quite good, despite Jenna Zan Arbor just disappearing. Well, she gets sent to prison, but it's not very satisfying. And I remember she shows up in Jedi Quest. She's one of the big baddies near the end of that series. I don't know. Have you ever read Jedi Apprentice, Brian?
No, that was one that my sister read, and I never got the books from her before she got rid of them, which was really sad.
It's a pain to collect. I'll tell you what. That's
Mhm.
a
Is it?
one.
I mean, I go to those used bookstores all the time trying to find stuff like that, and I haven't seen them, so I'd believe it.
There's a few. If you want me to pick you up some, there's a few in my local bookstore. Yeah,
I mean, if you get the chance, maybe we'll hook up at some point.
yeah, that'd be the reason you come to my wedding.
That's right. That's the real reason.
Yes.
Jedi Apprentice books.
Clean out house at your local bookstore.
Oh, dude, we're all gonna have to go to that bookstore. It's huge. It's a big warehouse,
That's awesome.
and
That's your
there's
bachelor party. We're going to the
floor-to-ceiling
bookstore.
shelves. Well, we took my engagement photos. One of our sets of engagement photos was in that bookstore. Like, it's crazy. It looks like an old library. It's a great place. But yeah, I
Sounds
finished
like it.
Jedi Apprentice book 13. I'm halfway through Indiana Jones and the Unicorn's Legacy, which is the second to last officially released Rob McGregor book. He also wrote a novelization to Staff of Kings, which you can listen to on his podcast. He read the whole thing on there during COVID.
Huh.
Lucasfilm did him dirty, and they never released his novel because they decided we're going to make The Force Unleashed instead of Staff of Kings on the main consoles. What else am I? Oh, I started reading some Highlander comics. The Coldest War, which is a weird Cold War Highlander drama where they're like trying to clone the Kurgan from the first movie. Like and it's weird to see any of you seen Highlander?
The first one?
Yes.
Yeah, the first movie.
Yeah.
So the villain in that, there's a panel where he's standing next to Khrushchev from the USSR, and it's just the weirdest thing. It's just because like there's a Soviet Union. The plot is the Soviets want to make super soldiers, and they use the Kurgan's DNA to make soldiers that are immune to pain.
How does that work? Because the Highlanders lose their power when they die. So where do they? How did?
I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense, but they show up later in the Highlander audio dramas. The Cult of Kurgan shows up again.
Whenever I hear about this tie-in material, like for Highlander or whatever, my first question is always like, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to read it, but it's like, is it canon to that story?
Yeah. The only thing that's not canon, aside from the weird fanfic from the series where they claimed that Duncan's girlfriend Tessa survived, is that Highlander 2: The Quickening is not canon, so they aren't aliens from the planet Zeist,
Oh, that was a trip.
which is unfortunate because that's a better movie than Highlander: The Source, the fifth one that was made for Sci-Fi Channel.
Wait, there's 5 Highlander movies?
Yeah, you didn't know that?
I thought there were 3.
No, so the fourth one is a tie-in between the TV show and the movies, where Connor's killed near the end, so that Duncan can be the Highlander. And then the fifth one was straight to Sci-Fi Channel, so we all know it's good quality.
Yeah.
And at the end, spoilers. I'm going to spoil this. No one should watch Highlander: The Source. I'm doing you all a community service because I've seen this more than once. The prize is a baby. Duncan decides, no, I'm done killing, and he and his immortal girlfriend have a baby, and they all become mortals. And that's the end of Highlander. How embarrassing!
Now I almost have to watch it.
It's horrible. It's so horrible. But I've been reading some Highlander because I've been talking to Matt Wilkins a lot the last couple days.
Mm.
And I was looking up weird Highlander merch, and I found merch for the spin-off Highlander TV show, The Raven. They made t-shirts for it. That thing got canceled like mid-season. I don't get why, but I might have to buy one. Go to conventions with my Highlander the Raven t-shirt.
That'll be a conversation starter.
Well, yeah, if I wear it around town here, no one's gonna know what I'm
Oh,
talking
speaking of, this guy right here wore the Waru shirt on the first day.
That's right. Abel Pena really liked it. And so did Joe Bongiorno.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, it was. I got a custom made for the con.
You should have sent pictures to the Geeks Attic. You would have really appreciated it.
It's his favorite character. Actually, you know what? Maybe I will. I'll tweet him later today.
Do it.
Yeah.
Do it. He was on here. He did watch like 10 minutes of the stream.
Yeah.
I'm shocked he lasted that long.
I'll send him a tweet. I know he's famous for his Crystal Star review.
He's also famous for laughing at me when I drunkenly fell out of my chair.
A chronic problem at Legends Con streams.
Yeah,
from what I hear.
which time? You'll have to be more specific.
The podcast that we never actually released on iTunes. Actually, the first time we did that. The one where Noah started calling me Jerry Kotzwinkle III. My alter ego.
What's the story behind that?
Oh God.
There's so much
No, we
lore.
started. I got so drunk during a stream a few years ago. It was right before COVID. It was right before all the drama with B Level and all that.
Yeah.
It was right before that. I got so drunk that I fell out of my chair and hit my head on something.
Oh damn.
And that's the only clip that still survives because Noah got a hold of it.
Of course he did.
So it's on the Quality Autism channel. Go check it out. My fiance laughed at me. It's like the only thing that I'm in that she's ever watched. But anyways, so I started doing a Q&A because I just wanted to stream while drunk. And then I don't remember why I said it, but I was my father wanted to name me Jerry the Third, and then Noah changed it to Jerry Kotzwinkle the Third, and that was like my alter ego, which became my porn name. And the only person that buys my Jerry Kotzwinkle porn is Matthew. He's the only subscriber.
There's a lot of lore for the Legends podcast.
That was a big dump of nonsense.
This requires its own wiki page.
Yes. Remember when they used to be numbered?
They are numbered. I just don't number the live streams. They get numbered when they go onto Spreaker and get distributed as podcasts.
Oh, okay.
They also get titled because I once titled something. I can't remember. I gave it a boring title, and then I made a joke because I was watching Twin Peaks, Fire Walk with Me. I just watched that, and I said Waru Flow Walk with Me.
Waru Flow Walk.
So that became the new title. And so after that, I just never named them again.
Waru Flow Walk with Me.
We did it with the Legends Con stream, and after the first night, I think Dylan, you were there. I don't know if you were there at this point though, but Alex fell out of his chair.
Mm-hmm.
It was a chronic problem.
He wasn't drunk though. He had no excuse.
It afflicted a lot of people at that convention.
Well, Jeremy fell up a flight of stairs while drunk once. That was
God, that was a long time ago. I forgot about that. I tried to roll up a flight of stairs while you were on a laptop.
Yep.
Brian, were you there for that?
Mm-mm.
I don't think I knew you yet. No, Amelia was.
Mm-hmm.
It was Dylan, Amelia, and me.
I can imagine she got a kick out of that.
And I was just rolling up the stairs because I lived in like a basement studio at the time. That was also known as the dinosaur wall room because when I moved in, it was a playroom. And I had to paint over these dinosaurs, and you could still see them through the wall if you look closely because they were in all sorts of pastel colors and I didn't feel like putting a second coat of paint on.
So what I'm hearing is that we have a missed opportunity here because if you had come to Legends Con, there was like a cantina night on the Saturday night.
Oh yeah.
Jeremy,
I don't get that drunk anymore.
Remember, that was another funny story. How like we were all like hanging out. We were talking with like Jason Fry and Joe, and like in the convention hall, and they said, we got to kick you guys out because we had to lock the doors. So we walked out, and then we walked into the area that they were going to have the cantina thing, which had like it was like a pre-bought tickets thing where you had I think it was like tickets like $75.
$75. I was like, I
And
was gonna
then-
go, and then I saw the price. I was like, yeah, I think I'd rather do something.
So then we're all
else.
just standing here talking there, and I think every single one of us like was collectively thinking they're probably going to kick us out at some point, but we're just going to keep talking until they do.
Really a good
Pretty
half
much.
hour. It was a long
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
No,
We talked with Jason Fry about like the weather and like
He just kept commenting on the weather.
It was very nice weather.
It's like he's like, "Did you see that sky over there? It's a really impressive
making
sky."
small talk with Jason Fry only at Legends Con.
So you're saying it's better than when I got lost at Gen Con because I was so drunk?
At Gen Con.
Oh yeah, in 2016.
What time
I
of
was
day was it?
consistently drunk for most of that. I got so drunk I started falling asleep places, and I fell asleep next to a bunch of neckbeards. Because at Gen Con there are people that they just play Pathfinder all night long, and they sleep during the day in the halls. And so I just curled up near some of them and slept for an hour. Matt Wilkins is like calling me. He's like, "Where'd you go?" And I'm like, I'm taking a nap. And then I took a nap when this lady was trying to explain a board game to us.
Yes, I heard about this again.
And
recently.
Matt claims that I had narcolepsy. I was just too drunk.
What time of day was this? It was like 1 in the afternoon.
This was in the evening.
Okay.
This is at night. We'd been in the board game library all day. This is when we played Twilight Imperium, and I got sick of Dylan winning at games, so I intentionally sabotaged him so he wouldn't win.
Isn't that game like 8 hours long or something like that? It's like
Yeah,
It took
we
like-
played
it took
in
us like-
4.
Yeah. We had a very quick. I love telling that story because people who aren't in the know say 4 hours. That's really long for a board game. But people who are in the know will go, "That's a really quick game of Twilight Imperium."
Well, I play Dungeons and Dragons. 4 hours is near impossible
Oh,
to achieve,
So
right? It's
you
like
barely get anything done in 4
Yeah.
hours in Dungeons and Dragons.
we spend the first
Even
2
if your
hours just
party's
wrapping up.
all on board to do the same thing, it's like near impossible.
Oh, it's
Right.
impossible.
I'm finally in another game group for that. Get to play again on the 29th. Looking forward to it. It's a lot of fun. I do love playing those types
I
of
still
tabletop
can't
games.
I still can't find it. I have a couple groups, but they're all online. I can't find an in-person group anymore.
Yeah, same. I don't have time anymore. I got school full time and work full time. I decided that 18 and a half units was a good idea for starting back at school.
Yeah, nice. Take it easy like that. Yeah.
Well, they're 8-week classes, so the 18 and a half units is split in half for the semester, so it's manageable, but barely. And it's all lab classes, so
Sounds rough to me.
How does it work? Do you have to go in, or do you get to? Do
oh
it
yeah,
yourself?
yeah, it's welding.
It's all okay. Well, yeah, there you go.
Oh, I have fun. I have a blast.
I was gonna say it doesn't sound miserable if it's
I've
something you're
only
enjoying.
caused 2 fires.
Hopefully not the one you almost had to evacuate for.
No. No, that was a brush fire that was 5 minutes away. It only burned down 2 sheds. No house. A couple houses got damaged, but we're all okay because I told Noah, worst case scenario, that I needed help recollecting my books, and apparently it caused a panic in Noah's Discord. It was not the intent. I'm very sorry.
You know, I've had like 3 cases now that involved a fire and a welder. So, just,
One of the 3 fires that we started the year at work was caused by a welding fire.
Oh yeah, because they don't give you the right tools. When you're
No, because the idiot was welding while there was like oily pig mat like 5 feet away from him, and he set the pig mat on fire.
A couple
And then-
jobs ago, we had a guy who was welding certified, and they asked him to weld a storage unit around a bunch of brush, and they didn't give him any protective equipment. to mitigate the fire. So of course the brush fire started, and then they fired him for it. It was ridiculous. It wasn't his fault. It was their fault. And
See, our welder was lucky because when the fire started, he ran and picked up the first fire extinguisher off the shelf. But because like they hadn't done safety inspections in a while, the fire extinguisher was actually empty. So like he had to go get a second fire extinguisher. And because he was like, well, the first fire extinguisher I picked off the wall was empty, they kind of like went like, yeah, we'll just call it even then. And he didn't get any like write-ups or anything for that.
Oof. That gives me chills as a commercial property manager. You always have that stuff inspected because it's your butt on the line if it doesn't work.
Gives me chills as someone who defends commercial property management.
I don't doubt it.
Okay, I just wanted to highlight this one. Imagine calling someone's college a major a joke. My sister would agree with you, but I wouldn't agree with my sister's choice in major.
Do we want to know?
Sometimes I'll tell you what. It's not about your major. If you're in college, you get the opportunity to go to college. Take some well-rounded classes. So, like, maybe your major's your dream, but your dream doesn't work out. I learned this the hard
fall
way.
Back on.
Take some classes so you have some skills to fall back on. That's how that's what I have to say about that. Otherwise, you end up. I turned 29 Sunday, and I'm in college again. It's not enjoyable. I mean, it's enjoyable, but I'm like the elderly person there now.
How do you do, fellow kids?
Well, I have a guy in my hydraulics class who's old enough to be my father, and he and I, of course, are in the lab group, along with the guy who's ex-Navy. He's a few years younger than me. Like the older guys, we just all end up together.
It's funny. I was talking to Brian and Dylan about this. I think at the con on the second day, we were talking about the difference between college and university. But like getting like a trade is so much more useful these days than going to college for something like a BA where you graduate at the end of it and you can't find a job. Right.
Another
political science major or something like that.
Another thing is when you get into like especially state-run colleges, there's a whole bureaucracy around it, and it's a shit show.
Yeah.
I went to a school where they spent $15,000 of tuition money on a bronze statue of the school mascot.
Yep.
Oh,
$15,000 after the students asked for new computers.
That's like a misappropriation of funds.
Yep. Yep. But since they're state run, they're allowed to do that.
They put up, I remember this was, I found out about this after, but 2 or 3 years before I actually got there, they apparently put up guardrails on the top floor of the computers, of the math building because too many students were jumping off of it. That was interesting to learn about later.
Yeah. Community college. If you're in America, go to community college.
That's where I started.
Even like, speaking of someone with an engineering degree, even that's difficult to find work for, like surprisingly.
Yeah.
I think I sent out, to get the current job, I sent out like over 100 applications and I got like 2 or 3 responses
Dylan,
back.
I sent you a job
yeah, you sent me one after
where I live so you could be close to me.
Right.
And you said no.
And it's 8 hours away.
You can live in my yard.
Yeah.
I got a nice big yard you can live in with the outside cats.
Northern California and Louisiana.
Yeah, Marcel,
are wide
I
open
know this.
to you.
I know this great firm. It's out in Nova Scotia. Do you want to move? That's
You know what?
Actually,
Actually,
of what he did.
Yeah, well, I've heard stuff like that before, and I'm like, not on your life, please. That's like close to the Atlantic Ocean. I just like walk out into sea and never come back.
Yeah. Sounds about right.
I tell you what, I don't want to live anywhere hot ever again. I mean, it's been an average of like 110 degrees for like 2 months here. Well, yeah, you live. Brian lives where humans aren't supposed to live. People aren't supposed to live in Arizona.
I'm sitting here like,
It's too damn hot.
this is sounding familiar somehow.
But, like,
As I
wanna
wake up
move
every
to
day,
Maine.
thankful my HVAC unit's still alive.
Right. We talked about that too, HVAC technicians and how essential they are.
Oh yeah, no. Hey, look, coming from a commercial property manager, if you are going to a trade school, I love you because we need so many more of you.
You know, here we have like 3 months of like really, really good weather, probably like, you know, in the 80s to 100s. And then like the rest of it is just rain and garbage. And then like 3 months of perpetual snow.
Rain is not garbage. That's a luxury.
Yeah, here it is.
Yes.
There,
Yeah,
there
fair
are,
enough. I'll tell you
there-
what,
I'm of
it's
two
snowed
minds when
here.
it comes to rain.
Yeah.
Two minds. Rain is awesome when it comes in, short spurts and has time in between it. But I could never
Mhm.
live somewhere where it is constantly raining. I would be so depressed all the time.
Yeah.
I think Florida is the best for rain because every day at 4 p.m. sharp it'll rain in Florida, and then at 4:15 it stops raining. That is
Unless
like
I'm there.
That's the perfect amount of rain. That is like, you top off the aquifers, and then but it goes away, and then you can go back to your normal day.
I was coming to Legends Con from I was coming to Burbank from Seattle, and I left Seattle because it was a chilly morning. I was wearing jeans and a long sleeve shirt and like a hoodie. And I just step out of the airport, Burbank, and I have like a bag strapped to like a backpack strapped to my front, like a giant backpack strapped to my back with all my books in it. And it was just like stepping into a cauldron, like an oven. I was so hot, and I was like,
It was just the two different. Like, what time did you get there during that day?
I was like 3:30 in the afternoon.
Yep.
And I walked up to the traffic guy at the airport. He was like directing traffic and stuff. And I said, "Can I walk?" He's like, "Where's the Marriott?" He's like, "Would you gonna walk there?"
I
It was
so I
like
don't
an
know
8-minute
if we told.
walk.
I don't
I
know if we
walked.
told this story, but the
I
Friday
walked it.
before, we all just kind of ran into each other, like completely coincidentally outside of the con.
That's right.
Right. But it was setting up because that was Dylan and I were scheduled to set up. They didn't let us in until like 6:00, but we hung out most of the day, and then we went to go set up, and we actually ran into these guys outside as we were setting up.
Yeah, at like the patio. It was you, Marcel, and you're Marcel, you, Brennan, and Alex, and then like solely like other people. Like I think Max came. I know Son of Luke or Ryan came.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, that was a surprise. That was it was one of those. Hey, by the way, I'm here. I'm like, I had an extra ticket. What are you doing here?
To
I know
answer-
Scott.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was within walking distance. But as Brennan said, I got there like 5 minutes later. I was completely drenched in sweat.
Well, yeah. I mean, I was wondering because like I got there on Thursday and it was around noon and it was like mid 70s and I'm like, this is heaven.
We've also had a weird summer in Southern California where Jeremy, I don't know if it was like this for you, but down here it didn't start getting like normal summer weather until July 1st. Like we
Yeah,
had
it
a-
was raining and stuff here. Well, it snowed here. It snowed here in the spring, and it never snows where I live. We moved here. It was 112 degrees, and then we got snowed in April. Wasn't it April? I think I called you.
Yeah, it was
During-
that sounds right when we got the rainstorms. We're still
Yeah,
in a
it
drought.
was-
We've had
it
record
snowed.
rainwater these last 2 years, yet we're still in a drought.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, where I live, we're not in a drought anymore. But once the rest of the state decides to steal our water, we will be.
Yeah, when I made the comment about the rain, I forgot about California's drought issues.
Oh my god! The fact that it's a tinderbox
Yeah.
10 months of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Good times.
The West Coast generally, there was like forest fires, and I remember we went to BC like a few years ago before the pandemic, and there was just a perpetual
Mhm.
haze in the sky. And then I
Yeah.
think earlier this year, we missed it, but earlier this year there was the same thing.
Oh yeah. I drove up to Montana a month ago, and it was fires. Oregon was on fire. Idaho was on fire.
Yeah.
West Montana was on fire. It's a pain. Not as bad. Arizona had a bad fire season this year. Arizona and New Mexico did.
We usually do have some bad fires. It's typically monsoon season comes in. You get some good lightning storms come out where there's been no rain, and of course everything's going to spark off. And then of course there are the idiots that are just setting them off themselves. So.
Yeah, that's generally on the West Coast. It's like we don't really have seasons. The 4 seasons, we have 2 seasons. We have the wet and dry season. So in the winter and spring, it rains, and then like as the summer dries out, all like the plants and stuff, like around fall usually.
Fall's the worst.
Is when the fires actually start from all the plants that have died from not getting rainwater for the last few weeks.
It's going to be
months.
Rather rough this year, as I know we've been losing. It's been particularly warm this year. Well, hot this year, I should say. And we've lost a lot of plants that would normally make it through a summer. It's been kind of scary to see. So it'll be an interesting next few months.
So yeah, if you live out west, get insurance for your Star Wars collection.
That's right.
Yep.
Or know where you can source a new one.
Yes.
By the way, does anybody know where Chris Nelson lives? Just for reasons.
I do. Not like his address, but I have a general idea.
I need to send him something. Thank you for reminding me.
He sold his copy of Imprint, so he no longer has a complete collection.
Why? Did he have another child?
Not that I'm aware of.
It's one of the few things I don't have.
I think that the person he sold it to, that was that person's second copy of Imprint. So that person owns 2 physical copies of Imprint.
This is like Brian, you have 2 copies of Queen's what was that?
I have 1 copy of Queen's Gambit. 1. And it will forever be behind layers of security because of one Matt Wilkins. I haven't touched that game in years because of that guy.
That's a fun
it is a fun game. I just really haven't had anybody over to play that game in a long time, but it's a fun game. If you ever come across a copy of Queen's Gambit for a decent price, meaning like under $100,
you'll never find it under $100.
I know you'll never, but if you do, buy it.
I was gonna say under 300.
Probably more accurate these days.
Yeah,
I haven't looked in a while.
And some of them are broke. They got like broken pieces and stuff. I look every once in a while on eBay. A lot of them aren't complete.
What's the most expensive thing, like one singular thing that you've purchased from the expanded universe?
That I can talk about or I can't talk about?
If you don't want to talk about it, I just want to know the price point. But if you can talk about it, I mean, obviously I want to know what it is.
I can't think of what it would be for me. I have spent a lot of money on like miniatures and whatnot, so like lots of little things, but not any one big thing. Might even be Joe's book, to be honest. Maybe.
Oh, that's fair.
My Century Star Wars books, which would be the Gambit duology. I'm sorry, Stealth and Gambit. Got to say the correct name. No Prisoners and Wild Space. I bought them all from the same person. And because I was spending so much money, he gave me a discount on New Jedi Order as a whole.
Yeah.
All of Jedi Apprentice, all of Jedi Quest, all of Last of the Jedi, Coruscant Nights, Last Jedi, Yoda Dark Rendezvous, Jedi Trial, and Cestus Deception, and I paid $1,500.
Wow, that's a haul. That is a haul. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I was both wowing at what you were saying and what the prices for Queen's Gambit are right now.
That was a big purchase, but that was a lot of things. But for an individual thing, the closest I could get to would be the original Marvel Years omnibuses, the variant covers. I spent $500 to get the 3 of those.
Okay.
Indiana Jones, I can tell you. buying the Further Adventures of Indiana Jones, which are the Marvel comics. They were only printed, collected once in the little Dark Horse omnibuses.
Those
I
white
spent
ones, right?
$136 on those.
136. Those are the white omnibuses that you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah. You know what's crazy is that I used to see those all the time in bookstores and comic stores back in like the early 2008, 2009.
Mhm.
And I don't know, for whatever reason.
They didn't sell well.
Yeah.
It's a shame. All the Indiana Jones stuff is a bitch to get now.
It's the yak face problem. The most expensive Return of the Jedi figure, not because anyone wanted it, but because no one wanted it. So there's not any surviving copies of it.
Well, it was also a UK exclusive, and it was technically Power of the Force. Well, it's part of the last 17 of the original Kenners.
I think mine, the most expensive was the Dark Horse Mega Bundle, which was $300. That's the most I've spent technically on one Star Wars item.
Yeah. Mine was the KOTOR campaign guide. I think it was like 200 US.
God, I have very little Star Wars RPG stuff anymore. That is not something I have tried to recollect after I lost them all.
Yeah.
I have some adventure journals. I actually have them right here because I'm moving some things around in here. But I only have a third of the adventure journals because they're expensive.
They're so expensive. I would love to get a complete copy of all the adventure journals and then Lulu, the two that were never published, the 16, 17.
That was something I talked with Barbara Hambley about. I told her, are you aware of back in the Bantam, back then when
that's
they
right.
gave you a bunch of Western Games source books and stuff as research, are you aware of how much those go for these days online? And she said, no, I do not. They're in boxes, though. I don't know what they are anymore.
She's sitting on a gold mine.
That's crazy. They're
They
probably
all
in
are.
pristine condition too, I imagine. Like she hasn't touched them in like 20 years more.
Probably.
You should just send them to me.
I'll say, hey, this gentleman lost all of his RPG materials in the fire.
Oh, well, Delray sent me a care package back in the day, which I've
Mhm.
mostly sold. I'm sorry, but I needed the money, and it was New Canon.
Yeah.
But I have one of them. I have the 20th anniversary of Heir of the Empire.
Well, it was still
Mhm.
nice of them to do that too. Like,
Oh yeah, and they gave me Master and Apprentice before it came out.
that was pretty
they-
cool.
Gave me an early copy of that so I
Yeah.
could read it.
Pre-release of the book. That's nice.
That's nice.
Yeah, I think that might have been an accident.
I
But
only own like 3 New Canon books, and one of them is Aftermath by Chuck Wendig. I got it when it came out of morbid curiosity, and I've tried for years to sell it, and I refuse to just give it away because I need to get some money out of this book, and no one will purchase it from me.
I sold the whole Aftermath trilogy for $200.
Really?
How? Who?
It was right after Rise of Skywalker. I sold all of my new. You remember when I sold all my New Canon?
Yeah.
I made a shitload of money off of that.
Who bought Aftermath? Who bought the Aftermath trilogy?
I
Who
don't
was
know.
it?
There was one guy bought a bunch of the stuff. He also bought all my Zahn New Canon books too. And
Even those are getting reprinted now.
well, they were
I remember-
hardcovers. That was the thing, and like a New Dawn and Tarkin, like the early ones, I sold those for several $100s a piece because they sold so poorly that they cut the print runs on those. We used to talk about that on Minox Nest, how badly those books did.
Yeah, I'm looking at eBay for Aftermath hardcovers, and they're all like $10 Canadian, which is
Well, that's
like
because
$7
Star Wars books aren't worth shit now.
Well, yeah, they've driven the IP into the ground. So
Yeah, the only stuff that is worth money is like the sci-fi book club books are kind of expensive.
Yeah.
I just discovered they had Old Republic sci-fi book club books.
Did they?
Yeah, Revan and Deceived got them.
I didn't know that.
I just discovered them the other day because I have. So I'm in a conundrum right now. My copy of Visions of Spectre of the Past is book club size, but my copy of Visions of the Future is Bantam size.
Oh, that hurts.
It does.
You
and
need
I
to
have
correct
them
that.
next to each other, and I don't like how they look.
I can feel your pain on this.
Yes, it's not feng shui enough. Plus, my Callista trilogy, my Dark Saber is book club size, but the other two are bantam size. I didn't even know the only one of the single bantam books I knew was book club size, like ever, was New Rebellion, because that's the one I had growing up as a kid. It's one of the ones my parents had that they liked a lot. But I now have bought New Rebellion twice, and they've both been book club size.
Nice.
Hmm.
It's the only two times I've ever seen New Rebellion book club size. I've owned them both.
At one point in the con, we brought it was Brennan and I. We brought Lulu copies of Skywalkers
Mhm.
that we got custom made to Abel Pena, and we were in line wondering, like, oh man, is he going to refuse to sign them because they're Lulu copies? He didn't like bat an eyelash. He thought they were cool. We actually Brennan gave him a custom Lulu copy of Skywalker.
Wow. I remember you saying that. I got Joe to sign my Lulu and Amazon copy of Heart of the Jedi.
Mm.
I just need Ken's signature now. I don't know if I'll ever see him at a con though.
Maybe
Never
you
know.
can mail it into him with like return postage or something like that. I'm sure he'd probably sign it for you.
God, I almost pulled out something that I cannot show on here.
That's
Don't
right.
get in
You
trouble,
and your-
Jeremy.
Or after the stream.
I'm not Matt Wilkins.
You and your bookshelf that isn't even in chronological order because you. Like
It is in chronological order now.
Oh, it is. You
I
fixed it.
did it last week. I changed it over.
Okay.
I know. I infamously didn't have them in chronological order because they're not all the same size, and it bothered me looking at it. But I found out it bothered me more that they weren't in chronological order. And when I say they're in chronological order, my Rebellion era and my Clone Wars era are both really fucked up because that
Yeah.
requires a lot of work. And I said, in December, when the semester's over, I will fix those. Because those are both out in the hall with most of my EU books. They're out in
Those
the
are
hall.
those
This is
are
all
two.
post Jedi here, starting with Crystal Star. It's
What-
Crystal Star down to Crucible.
Those are two forgivable ones to have slightly out of order, just because no one can seem to agree on what the order is because of how convoluted those two eras are. Like it's one thing to have like Fate of the Jedi Outcast in front of like New Jedi Order enemy lines, right? But it's like when the Clone Wars part of the shelf is out of order, it's kind of like, yeah, but that's just Clone Wars.
I was gonna say, is there a correct order?
I don't think there is at this point with Clone Wars. As long as you can follow Anakin's a Padawan and then Anakin's knighthood,
Yeah.
I don't think it matters anymore.
That's fair. I think that's fair.
And when I say things are in chronological order, I'll have like a 2-in-1, like the Republic Commando Volume 2 Sci-Fi Book Club. Those books, there's a bunch of things that happen between those books.
Mhm.
So that's obviously.
I have that because I have the OT novelizations in the 3-in-1s. They're just kind of like in the middle of my Rebellion era section.
I have that with the AC Crisp and Han Solo books. Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense.
The real question is, where do you place Junior Jedi Knights? Do you place it in between?
Before Young Jedi Knights, because it doesn't make sense. I will fight you, Matt, on that. That is stupid. I love you dearly, dude. You're one of my best friends, but that's fucking dumb. That makes my hair recede thinking about that. That doesn't make any. That makes less sense than. I'm not gay. I'm not throwing shade. I'm not gonna get it.
Yeah, thought another eclipse going on there for a second.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm gonna call it there. Because I want to show something off that I can't show you guys. It's the ultimate thing. And it's not what you think. It is not an escape for Dagu.
Yeah, only William has that one.
Nice.
All right.
All right. I'll talk to you guys. We'll talk to you guys later. Have a good one.
Bye.
Stay Gucci.